Welcome back to the Off Campus Podcast, everyone. Today is June 3rd, 2023. I know it's been a while. I would like to apologize for that. There's a lot of different reasons why. I got really busy with work in the winter. That tends to happen. And I wasn't making this a priority, which I will admit. I do enjoy doing these, like I've said before, so I appreciate you all watching and listening. And I love all the feedback that you guys give me. But, I got really busy, and I kind of was lazy getting back at it. I definitely could have done it the past few months, at least. So, I'm going to get back into podcasting. I really do enjoy it. And I think I have a lot of, useful information that I'm sure you guys will enjoy listening to and going through with me and other people. Today, this is just going to be a sort of introduction to a series that I'm going to be doing. So, as you all know, I've mentioned before a lot, I listen to and read to Jordan Peterson. He has a few books, 3 or 4 books, I think 4 at this point. And one of those is 12 Rules for Life, which I have read, and now I am reading 12 more Rules for Life. But this series that I'm going to be doing is just going to be focusing on the first book, 12 Rules for Life, because these are great rules that everyone should be following. So basically what I'm going to be doing with these upcoming podcasts is I am going to have one person on at a time for each rule. I'm going to do one episode for each rule. I'm going to have someone on who I think has perfected the rule, someone who wants to explore the rule a little bit. There's a lot to these. It'll make a lot more sense as we go through them. And I will, in this episode, be going through the 12 rules real quick and kind of what they mean, because they're not all like super obvious. So I'm basically just going to be having one person on for each rule. We're going to be discussing it, going through what it means, the deeper meaning behind it, how it can help your daily life, things like that. So we'll start with the first rule, which is stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, this one is pretty self-explanatory, but in the book, Jordan Peterson uses the example of lobsters, where they have a dominance hierarchy and they fight, and they know who's the superior lobster. They know not to mess with that lobster because they know if they mess with that lobster, there will be consequences. And the whole gist of this rule is kind of, stand up straight with your shoulders back. That's what does that mean? That means standing up tall, speaking what you think, being daring. And he also brings up, when you do those sort of things, it encourages like serotonin flow through your brain and through your body, which in turn makes you less anxious, more confident, and increases the probability that good things will happen in your life, which obviously that is all great stuff. And I already know who my guest is going to be for that episode 1 of this series. It's going to be Matt Chizokis. I don't know if you guys know him. I already had him on the podcast. He's a great guy. He's really nice to have a conversation with. He's super strong. He lifts a lot. So I think he's definitely not a shy person. He's very confident in himself in good ways and bad, but we'll discuss that. He knows it, though, so I'm not just making fun of him. So that's who I'm going to be having on for Rule 1, and that is Rule 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, on to Rule 2. It is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. This rule has a lot to it, and one of the most interesting things that Jordan brings up about this rule is he brings up studies showing that people are actually better at giving medications and administering medications to their dogs than they are to themselves. And I think part of the reason for that is that people critique themselves more than they critique anyone else. A lot of medication is expensive for people, so they just don't want to use it all, and they want to ration their medication, which obviously is not good for them. And another way of looking at this rule is to do what's good for you, not what makes you happy, because you would never give a kid a bunch of candy all the time to eat. Like, you'd never give your child a bunch of candy and junk food to eat all the time because it makes them happy. What makes them happy is not what is good for them, and a lot of the times that is the case. And obviously, if you're going to do for your kids what's good for them and not what makes them happy, you should be doing that with yourself too. So that's the most important part of that rule. Now, Rule 3 is make friends with people who want the best for you. I guess a way you could put this rule more practically is don't make friends with people who you wouldn't recommend for a brother or sister. So if you wouldn't want your brother being friends with a person, most of the time you shouldn't be friends with them either because of whatever reason. Like I say all the time and people do all the time, it's super cliche, but you become the 5 most people who you are around most, which is, it's very true. It's very true. I know it's cliche. And you can change the people who you are around to a point, but for the most part, you're going to become a lot like them, and you're going to start chasing their values and what they want, and that might not even be what you want. Even if it is what you want, it's probably not good for you, unless the people you are hanging out with have very positive and very good values and are striving towards something greater in life. And another part of this rule that I found very interesting while reading the book is that you really should be hanging out with people and being friends with people who celebrate when a good thing happens to you and they don't get jealous. Because I feel like we get caught in that a lot where we're around people and say something really good happens to you. Say something really good happens to you and they just kind of try and one-up you, or they aren't exactly happy for you. It's like almost like they're jealous or they're mad that you got something good and they don't. But that's not really a good friend, and you should really try to avoid those people because they're really not good for you, and they're not going to be building you up and building your future up and wanting the best for you. So I think that's the most important, and that's kind of the essence of that rule. Just, make friends with people who want the best for you. It's put very simply. Rule number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not with who someone else is today. And this is another kind of cliche one, but it's true. It's cliche for a reason because it is true. If you paralyze yourself with comparing yourself to other people, you're never going to be able to get anything done. And progress is really what matters. I wrote this down. There's always someone prettier, uglier, wealthier, poorer, stronger, and weaker than you. So there's really no reason to be comparing yourself to others. And also, if you do compare yourself to others and say, I don't know, we'll put this in money perspective. There's always going to be someone richer than you. It's always going to be someone with more money than you. But there's also always going to be someone poorer than you and less wealthy than you. And that means that you shouldn't focus too much on maybe the situations that the rich person was placed in to get where they were. Or maybe the person who's way poorer than you was growing up in a family that was super rich and they blew it all the money. You really never know what's going on with other people. So you can't compare yourself to others. You just need to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. As long as you're making progress, moving in the right direction, and doing the thing that you know is right all the time when you're trying to, at least. I mean, no one's perfect. We're all going to stumble. We're all going to make mistakes. But if we wake up every day and every decision that we make, we do what we think is right, likely you're going to have a pretty good life. And, there's suffering in the world, but we'll talk about that too. That's part of the other rules. So we'll go over that. I really like that rule. Compare yourself with who you were yesterday, not with who someone else is today. Now, rule number 5 might hit home with some people. It is do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. And I think this stems from the fact that a parent's job, their parent's real job, is to get their kids ready for the real world and prepare them for the real world. Because if you don't influence your kids, the world will. And the world will not hesitate to influence your kids and inject them with their values instead of yours. So you need to take advantage of that when they're young. Kids are most impressionable when they're under 4 years old. And studies show a kid who is not very social from the ages 1 to 3, once they hit 4, most likely they're going to be an outcast and they're going to be non-social or very, less social than everyone else. And this is another thing that Jordan Peterson talks about in the book. He goes through the study and everything. So I would like to encourage you all to read this book on your own. There's a lot of knowledge to it. I'm just going to go through it in these upcoming episodes. But I'm sure you guys would love the book. So, go ahead and read it if you want. But as I was saying, a parent's job is to show their kids how to treat others with kindness and respect, adults and kids, because you don't want to be around your friends, or your friends will never want to be around you guys if they hate your kids and if your kids are always coming in and distracting you and breaking up the conversation between you and your friends. No one likes that. And it's your job to discipline your kid and to tell them that is not okay. And if you think about it, in general, if you don't let your kid do anything that makes you dislike them, most likely everyone else is going to like them because you are the one that disciplines them. And if you treat them how to be respectful and if you teach them how other people will like them, then they'll do that. And there are a lot of benefits to that for your kid and for yourself and for your family altogether. Now, obviously, I'm not a parent, so I don't understand this one completely. But Jordan Peterson goes on and says something that I think is a little bit interesting about this rule is that he says avoid unnecessary rules like don't wear mismatched socks or just unnecessary rules that don't have to do with character. I think the whole gist of that is that it'll distract your kid from what's really important. And if there's rules on stuff that doesn't matter too much, then the rules on stuff that does matter a lot, your kid might not take it as seriously. Now, on to Rule 6. Rule 6 is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. And this one kind of has to do with Rule 4, which is compare yourself with who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. Sort of because people complain about the situations that they're in a lot, and they compare themselves to others in other people's situations, but they don't see the context, they don't see the backstory, they don't see the big picture either. There may be something that looks really good for someone, and who knows, it might be very detrimental to them, but you only see the good side of them, and therefore you think they're a lot more privileged than you, and you might be complaining about what's going on in your life when you think their life is going great, and you don't know that their life is horrible and they're not having a good time. Also, the world is in a very weird spot. There's a lot of crazies and a lot of crazy things being normalized in this world. But the essence of this rule is kind of just making sure you're doing everything you can to set yourself straight before you criticize others, because you may have opportunities that you're not taking, that you should take. If you're not working hard, if you have unhealthy habits, if you haven't made peace with a brother, like the whole essence is if you can't make peace in your own house, then how are you going to be able to make peace in the world or in a city or even in a smaller community? Because you really need to kind of check yourself and make sure you're doing everything right and you're set straight before you start criticizing others for not being great either. On to Rule 7. Rule 7 is pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And expedient kind of meaning short-term pleasures. So people often pursue things that are expedient and not meaningful. I mean, that's pretty obvious with hookup culture and, everything. Like fast food. No one wants to put in the work, go to the gym, work hard, do the sacrifice, get the reward at the end. The sacrifice it might be a big sacrifice, and it may be a lot of time and a lot of effort and maybe a lot of money. But usually when you sacrifice for things that are meaningful, well, that's where your meaning comes. And there's no doubt that life is suffering. There's a lot of suffering in life. But if you pursue what's meaningful and you work hard at that and you sacrifice for it, I guess that might justify the suffering in the world. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do, a lot of meaningful things that you can pursue instead of what is expedient. So strengthening your family, creating your own family, helping others. And I even wrote maybe a big project that will take a lot of sacrifice. And at the end, if your sacrifice doesn't pay off and you don't finish the task that you wanted to do, or you don't complete the project that you wanted to do, you will get a sense of accomplishment for putting in that effort, and you'll learn along the way. So that's awesome. It's awesome. So that is Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And Rule 8 is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And there's a lot to this rule. So when you tell a lie, you can use words to manipulate and change the world around you. But when we do that, we don't really consider the negative impacts of it. And it doesn't matter if you're lying to yourself or to others, there's always a negative impact, and there's always a negative sort of thing that comes along with it. So Jordan Peterson brings up what I think is a great example of this is when college students write what their teachers or what their professors want to hear instead of really what they believe. And I will admit, I did that in high school too. I didn't go to college, but I did that in high school, of course. I knew what the teachers wanted me to say, so I said it, and I got the better grade because of it. And it's really interesting how he brings it up, because he kind of views it as that's not your grade that you earned. Because when you're lying, who's talking? Is it really you? Or is it a twisted version of you that just wants to get something out of speaking, So you're lying just to get something out of it. So when you want that grade, it's not really you that's talking. It's kind of the spirit that knows what the professor wants, and therefore you're not the one that earned that A+ grade. It's not even you that got a grade. You didn't even get a grade because you didn't do the paper, because it's not what you believe. And so that's one part of it. And I would actually argue that there's no situation where lying is excused. I think a lot of the times it's preferable. Living by the truth is not easy. People will challenge you, but at least they're going to be challenging what you believe, and you're not going to be spouting out things that you don't believe to be true. Now, another point on this rule, which I think is kind of interesting, and honestly, I don't know where I stand, is the situation where you're being held hostage, and the person holding you hostage is like, okay, where is your friend? Because we're going to kill them, or else we'll kill you. I don't know if you should lie there. I really don't. So I would like people's comments on that. That would be great. I don't know where I stand on it. So just let me know what you think of that. Just put that in the comments. But that's all for telling the truth. Rule 9 is my personal favorite. Assume the person you are listening to might know something that you don't. And there's actually 2 different parts of it. One of them is pretty obvious, and the other is not so obvious. So we'll start with the obvious one first. People think generally that they are smarter than they are, which I think is pretty obvious. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that people think they're smarter than they are. But if you listen to someone, and you really listen to someone, you don't just listen to answer, you listen to learn, you generally will learn something, because people come from different experiences. People have different lives, very different lives. So if you really listen to someone, you might hear a perspective that maybe you would not have known, or you would not have seen before if you didn't listen to them. And so that's the first part of the rule. The second part of the rule kind of has to do with listening to someone who needs help. So when you let someone speak, you let their mind wander. And as their mind wanders and they kind of talk about maybe an issue that they're having, they might be talking about it and figure out the root of the issue just through voicing their concerns and voicing their thoughts. That happens a lot with people, and he brought this up because he was a clinical psychologist. So he did this with clients where he said 80% of the time, I'm not even talking. I'm just letting them talk, and a lot of the times, all they needed was someone to talk to and voice their concerns, voice their issues, and the root cause of the issue would arise, and a solution for that would arise. And then, this is also important, when you're listening to someone, you have to listen in this context. If they have an issue and you're listening to them, you have to listen to solve the issue. You aren't just listening to listen. You're listening to learn. You're listening to help them. And if you do listen to them diligently, you may be able to help them find the root cause of an issue at hand. So I think that's a very important part of that rule that kind of isn't too obvious. Now, rule 10 is be precise in your speech. With this rule, we are very often tempted to kind of cover up a problem, or maybe not cover up a problem, but run from it instead of dealing with it head on. So if we have an issue, we can kind of just ignore it because, it is a lot easier to avoid the anxiety and stress of facing a problem head on, which it is. It's way easier to just kind of push it to the side, ignore it. But those problems will grow and they will affect you later in life. This is true in any type of relationship. I think one of the key factors in be precise in your speech has to do with relationships. And not only about your goals, but your expectations in relationships, because your partner isn't a mind reader and you're not a mind reader. So even small things that you expect from your partner, you should voice those explicitly so they know, because they might not know. And I mentioned goals. If you don't explicitly and intentionally and precisely say what your goal is out loud to your partner or even just to yourself, if you don't know your goal, you're not going to be able to get there. So the first thing you need to do is be precise, be specific about your goals, about your expectations in relationships with friends, family, romantic relationships. It's all really important because, like I said, no one's a mind reader, and you can't just expect someone to know these things. Now, rule 11 is do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And I think this also kind of draws back to the helicopter parent, or just, a parent who doesn't want to let their kids do anything dangerous. They're always not letting them skateboard, not letting them go out with friends because they're scared they're going to get hurt, which I'm sure all parents can agree with and they can sympathize with, is that you want your kid to be safe. That's pretty obvious. They're your kid, and you don't want anything bad to happen to them, which is perfectly fine. But Jordan Peterson actually brings up a funny sort of hypothetical situation in the book, whereas if you bubble wrap your kid and you tie him to the pole in the basement so no one can ever hurt him, it's like, well, yeah, maybe the world isn't hurting him, but you are. And I think that's really true, especially with growing up. Pain gets worse throughout your life. I mean, that's obvious too. The only pain you're worried about when you're young is physical pain. And while that's not overlooked, that's not the worst pain that happens. The emotional loss is horrible. Any type of pain is just horrible, and it gets worse throughout your life. So you have to let kids go through the physical pain and go through the consequences of their actions to really be able to learn how to deal with the pain, so that when there's worse pain later in their lives, they know how to handle it and they know what to do. And the whole fact is, with skateboarding, if they fall and they scrape their knee, they're going to get back up. But they're also not only going to get back up, but they're going to learn how to be strong. They're going to know how to act when they scrape their knee, and even more. So that's the essence of Rule 11, do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And the final rule, Rule 12, is pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Now, this one is not exactly super obvious. You can apply this to dogs too, not just cats. He says it in the book too, so don't get offended, all you dog owners. I am so sorry that I didn't mention dogs along with cats first. But the whole point of this rule is it's really easy to focus on the negative things in life. And I've mentioned it before. I have that issue, and I'm working on that issue where I kind of see the negative things in life, and I don't really count my blessings all too often. I am getting a lot better at it, but there's always room for improvement. So I'm working on it, because there's really no use to focusing on the negative things in life. It's never gonna add more years to your life. It says in the Bible, actually, Sermon on the Mount, being anxious about anything, it's never gonna add years to your life, which is really true. Jordan in the book brings up this rule with his daughter's crippling arthritis, horrible arthritis. Had her hip and ankle replaced when she was 17. She had horrible arthritis. And so he had to watch his kid go through pain and medication that just made her life gray and stuff like that. And while it is important to focus on that and be able to solve it, he mentions that you need to dedicate time to do that. And you don't do that at night, because you're not going to be able to sleep. And it can't be in the afternoon either, because it's just going to make your day so much worse. If there's bad things, you can plan ahead, because your brain is more concerned with the fact that there is a plan rather than what the plan is. And that's true. People have less anxiety when they know there's a plan, even if they don't know the plan, which, it makes sense. It makes sense, common sense. But the importance of this rule is to spend time focusing on the small positive things. I wrote beauty of nature, random acts of kindness that you see people do all the time. It's around. Or, like he said, petting a cat when you encounter one in the street. On a bad day, it's a little glimmer of light. And on a good day, just another thing to be thankful for. So that's it. Those are the 12 rules for life and a little bit of an explanation for each one. If you guys know anyone or you yourself think you may have like mastered one of these rules, or maybe not even mastered, but you just want to discuss the rule deeper and you think you might have some knowledge you want to share, let me know. Message me on the side, because I will be glad to have anyone on. I love doing these, and I need people for this. So yeah, just let me know. Again, I'm sorry I haven't done a podcast in a while. I got really busy with work, and I've had some health issues. I'd be happy to speak to anyone on that on the side as well, but I'm not going to bring it up here. There's no real reason to. I'm okay, by the way. It's just inconvenient stuff, first world problems. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you have made it this far, if you don't mind, like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate that, and I'll see you all later.